Hi everybody, it is me, T, and welcome to Sewing Thursday with T. We are going to be talking about some great stuff today. Let me go ahead and introduce myself first. I am T of Sewing by T, that's my sewing blog, and Simply by T, my fabric shop. And I try to get together once a week for about 15 minutes or so to talk about sewing things. Welcome, Karen. So today I'm actually covering three really great things. Number one, seam rippers. Two, stretch threads, and keeping yourself safe when it comes to your iron. And of course, at the end of today's video, I'm going to announce the winners. So why don't we go ahead and get started? As you know, oh, hi Rhonda. A good seamstress always presses her seams, and that of course involves using an iron of some type. And irons are great, you know, whether you have a super expensive one or a cheap one, you need an iron. So not having an iron isn't one of the options, but today on my news feed, or not today, but this week on my news feed, I saw that somebody's iron had caught fire, and thankfully they were in their sewing area when it caught fire, and they were able to safely unplug their iron, and you know, their house didn't catch on fire. But that could be any one of us who leaves their iron plugged in, and I certainly leave my iron plugged in. The idea of remembering to unplug it, I have to admit, I just don't do it. Maybe it's just because I'm lazy, but I just don't unplug my iron. Now my iron will turn on if you just tip it down. And I leave my iron plugged in and I leave it sitting on my ironing board. I have 3 kids and 2 cats, and guess what? It is really easy for somebody to come by and knock it over and turn it on. And yes, it has a safety feature that will shut it off, but what is going to get ruined before that happens? So my husband got tired of coming and unplugging my iron for me. And at first I got really, really angry because he was like, I'm always unplugging your iron. You have to turn it off. It's so dangerous. And I was like, oh, but it's going to take me so long to keep plugging it back in. So we found this fabulous little device, and it is a timer. Let's go ahead and see if we can. So it is an automatic timer. I hit this little button and my iron will stay on for 15 minutes. That means that I am actively sewing. I'm in my sewing area. I'm dedicated to 15 minutes. My iron will turn on. I can use it. And in 15 minutes, it's going to turn off whether I'm using it or not. That means that my iron is not going to catch on fire when I am not there. So I cannot recommend this sort of product enough. You can find them on Amazon. It's an automatic outlet timer, I think is what it's called, but mine just has a little button on the top. So my timer is plugged in on the floor on a power surge bar, excuse me, and I can actually hit it with my foot, but it's tucked away in such a way that nobody else is going to accidentally hit it. So this is just a little safety feature. Don't allow your iron to catch on fire when you're not there. And her iron wasn't even on when it decided to go crazy and start having sparks fly all over the place. So don't go there. Not safe, not cool, and I think this is like $10 maybe. So if you have a designated sewing area and you have an ironing board set up, please be safe. Have a method that's going to make sure that your iron isn't going to turn on when you're not in there. So up next, seam rippers. So everybody should have at least one seam ripper. This is a seam ripper that came with my sewing machine, I think. Karen saying, I unplug everything in my sewing room when I leave it. And I think that's really great, Karen, but I have to admit, I don't always remember to do that. And when we're talking about plugging things in, you really should, if you're leaving your sewing machine plugged in, it needs to be on a power surge bar. And I obviously get nothing out of trying to sell you a power surge bar, but if lightning hits your house and knocks out your sewing machine, how upset are you going to be when a power surge bar could have protected it? So always have all of your appliances plugged in to a power surge bar. That will protect you from fires and from your machine getting blown out. Back to seam rippers. So this is a seam ripper that came with my sewing machine. It's not fancy, but as long as the tip is sharp, it does the job. But here's the thing. A lot of people's seam ripper is like years old. So if this one came with my machine, that makes it 4 years old, I think. So I can guarantee this seam ripper, not sharp. And a not sharp seam ripper means that when you're going to rip seams, you're going to end up gouging holes in your fabric. You're going to end up poking yourself and injuring yourself because it's not sharp enough to rip your seams. Now, I have several different kinds of seam rippers in my sewing area. I have this one. I think it was like $2 at Walmart. I probably bought it and just didn't really care. And that's just fine. It's no big deal. But I do have a seam ripper that I do love, which probably sounds kind of crazy. Who can fall in love with the seam ripper, right? So it is called Seam Fix. And it has this little rubber knobby on the top and a little rubber knobby on the bottom. So if you've ever ripped a seam, and I went ahead and did this one for us, and the seam is here, and you'll notice that, I'm gonna help you see it without blinding us. There we go. So you'll notice that not all the little threads came out. And you have to go back and pick those out because if you sew over it again, all those little threads are going to be showing. So the reason I love this seam ripper is you can take this little nubby end and rub it across those threads and they slide right out as opposed to like having to pick these out, especially if you have sensory problems with the tips of your fingers. This is going to be the best seam ripper ever. But here's the thing. You don't need to keep buying this seam ripper, which is like $3, because you just need this part right here. And then you can pair it with any other seam ripper that you can find. So you need this little nubby part, which you can keep like forever and buy whatever seam ripper you want. So you need to buy this one time. I have seen people use just a regular pink eraser to do the same job. I have found that sometimes this leaves little pink shreds on my fabric, and that can be a real pain. So this little piece right here, I think the seam ripper was $3 as opposed to like the little $1 ones. But always have a sharp seam ripper, and this little tip is the only part you have to keep. So I have several of these. I don't even know if any of these seam rippers are sharp anymore, which is kind of like I'm telling you to have a sharp seam ripper and I don't have a sharp seam ripper. But do as I say, not as I do. Have a sharp seam ripper. If you're going to be ripping seams, it's going to matter. And you really want this little rubber nubby that comes with this style. I bought mine at Walmart. I'm sure you can find it at any big box store, Joann's, whatever. But this little nubby really helps clean up all those threads. It's even more noticeable when you're, for example, picking out lightning bolt stitch, which nobody should ever have to do. That's like a form of torture. But if you have to do it, this nubby is going to help pull out all of those threads out of the seam. So if you're seam ripping, all those threads have to come out before you sew your next seam. All right, so next up, we are going to be talking about stretch thread. And I want to thank Karen for sending this question in because she asked me about the new Coats & Clark EloFlex thread. And what it's supposed to be is a stretch thread that you can use sewing straight seams. You put it in the needle thread and the bobbin thread, and you can sew straight seam on knit fabrics. Some Joann's carry it. I tried to find it at my local Joann's, and they did not have it. So I wasn't able to test it out. So I can't tell you for sure how well it works. I can tell you that I went online and did a little bit of research, and there are quite some popular seamstresses who that have blogs that recently gave away packs of the EloFlex, and they were really impressed with it. So what I did find on the Coats & Clark website is that, oh, Hobby Lobby's supposed to have it. So I also checked my Hobby Lobby, Karen, and they didn't have it either. But also keep in mind, I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming, so we don't get all the good fancy stuff, but that's okay. So I could not find the EloFlex, but you're supposed to be able to use it. You'd use it with a 7511 ballpoint needle, and you'd be able to sew straight line with your thread. I am going to order some to test it out, but I did a little bit more research for you guys to help you not only save a little money, but to completely understand the thread. So some people, when they think stretch thread, they think this little spooled stuff, and this is super stretchy, elastic stuff. And this stretch thread is meant for, oh my gosh, my brain just went dead. Well, that's really embarrassing. I can't remember. So this is for sewing. What is it called? Come on, ladies, you're seamstresses. What do we use this for? Oh my gosh, I can see it in my head. So that, shirring. Thank you, Karen. Oh my gosh, I feel so embarrassed. I don't know why I couldn't remember that word. So this is shirring thread, and you'd wind it in your bottom, use regular thread across the top, you sew your seam straight, you hit it with steam, and it gathers all back up. This is not for using for sewing knit garments, so don't get confused. This, not for shirring. So the other thread that Karen asked me about was Maxi Lock Stretch. So this is regular Maxi Lock. Let me find the thread end. And you'll see that thread is nice and thin. It's a little fuzzy, but it's fine for using in sergers. I have used this in a pinch on my regular sewing machine. The seams weren't as strong, but it works in a pinch. So if you're in a rush, you need to get something done, don't use it for customers, but certainly for yourself, it's fine. The Maxi Lock Stretch thread, on the other hand, is thick and fuzzy, and you are never going to get that threaded inside a needle. And even if you did, as it's sewing along, those threads are going to snap over and over and over again. So if you don't have enough stretch in your seam and you need a little more stretch, you can put this in the bobbin. This will work in a bobbin, but do not use it, try to use it in your thread, because it's going to shred as it's going. It's just going to fall apart on your seam. I do, however, use this on my sergers. So I make my daughter's leotards, and Simply by T does not sell leotard fabrics, so don't think I'm trying to sell you anything on that point. But I do use it in my upper and lower loopers on my daughter's leotards. I do not use it in the needle threads because, like I said, it will shred going through the needles. Because it's so loose, it's not tight enough to continuously go through the eye of the needle, the threads will snap. But it works great in looper threads or loopers, and it has a really soft finish as opposed to your regular Maxi Lock. So if you are sewing for someone who's more sensitive to the seams, you definitely want to go with the softer stretch. Now, whether you buy enough cones to make them all match or not, that is up to you. Wallwack does put these on sale. I can't remember the last time they did, and I don't remember the price, but they do go on sale. These are a great thread to have on hand if you're sewing workout gear, leotards, anything with a lot of spandex. And Karen here is saying it's also good for making soft rolled hems. Yes, really, really nice. And it's kind of a little thicker, so it makes a really full rolled hem as opposed to the thinner threads and you having to put your stitches so close together. So that's not enough though, because I did do more research, and Gutermann makes a stretch thread. Of course they make a stretch thread, and it's called Maraflex. I am going to order some Maraflex to try, but it is supposed to be comparable to the Coats & Clark Eloflex. And better than being comparable, the Coats & Clark is about a penny a yard of thread. The Maraflex is 3/10 of a penny. So it's about a third the price. So when you're buying the Maraflex from Wallwack, yes, you have to buy a giant sized cone. I prefer giant sized cones. I do lots of sewing. I am going to use that cone up in less than a year. And at a third of the price, it's going to be worth it. The other thing that I noticed is that unless your local Hobby Lobby, Joann's, wherever actually has the Eloflex, you're going to have to order it online. And right now, most places are out of the color white. And if they're not out of the color white, it's like $7 for a spool and $4 shipping. I'm not paying $10 for a regular size spool of thread. That might just be me. What do I know? But I'm going to try out the Maraflex. I'll order some Eloflex, and I will report back. Probably not next week because I don't know if I'll get them all in time, but it's definitely something to look into. If your machine really just does best on a straight stitch, those stretch threads are going to be your best bet. Right, so my 15 minutes are up. And if you have questions, go ahead and start posting those in the comments. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Don't forget to like this video and share with all your friends, because you know that they're going to want these tips and tricks. And anytime anybody has a question, I'm happy to answer. But the really exciting thing that we're doing at the end of today's video, we are giving away 2 3-yard packs of our custom double brushed poly. So I have already drawn 2 winners, and our winners are Renelle Hawkins and Amber Lundquist. So I am going to go ahead and tag them on our page, and they need to get in contact with me. If they are one of your friends, and you can contact them and let them know that they won, I will get in contact with them as best I can and get that passed out to them. If I don't hear from them in 48 hours, then I'm going to draw another winner. So if you didn't win today, there's no guarantee that I'm not going to be drawing another winner to make sure that we get these packs out. One more thing. So it was really exciting. Our pre-order fabric arrived today, a day early. So I look like this because I have been out cutting fabric since like 2 o'clock. And there is a lot of fabric out there. So I'm going as fast as I can through all of our pre-orders. Some of you may have already received shipping confirmation. However, our fuchsia double brush poly came in with black flecks on it. So it looks like it was a dye issue. I've contacted the manufacturer, but if your pre-order included fuchsia double brush poly, then I've got those on hold right now, and hopefully they'll go out early next week when we get a new roll. The other thing is a reminder that you should receive in your email tomorrow the newsletter. So make sure you're signed up for the newsletter or you won't receive it by email, telling you that tomorrow we have double brush poly for $5 a yard. That's all of our not custom fabrics. So there's solids and prints in there. They're $5 a yard. It's a good time to stock up. And I think that is all I have for you for today. So thank you for joining me. Remember, like and share. I appreciate you so much. And I will be back next Thursday. We're going to make it a regular Thursday thing. I'm not changing the date anymore. I don't care what my kids are doing. I will be here Thursday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Thank you for joining me.